Thank you very much, and welcome to this very, very topical conversation about the so-called gray zone warfare, or actually, as the title of the panel says, we are now out of the gray zone and very much out in the open. And indeed, one of the issues that we are facing today with this Russian hybrid warfare that is significantly accelerating all the time in the past weeks is that Russia seems to care less and less about whether there is any amount of plausible or implausible deniability in these actions, and is becoming more and more avert about this. So turning first to you, Margus Tsahkna, Foreign Minister of Estonia. Estonia is certainly no stranger to Russian airspace violations. Unfortunately, we in this region are sort of used to this stuff happening, but the latest one was qualitatively different for sure. So it was, first of all, the number of Russian fighter jets that were sort of participating in this incursion, 3 of them, and then that they lingered for a whole 12 minutes in Estonian airspace. So this sort of raises a lot of questions, and we saw a very heated debate in this region about whether we should start shooting them down or what should be the proportional answer to this. From your perspective, does the Baltic air policing still feel like an adequate arrangement, or should NATO start moving towards Baltic air defense and not just policing?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here as well, and the question is actually very appropriate. But I do my point about this grey zone. I don't know who put the name on that, but we are not in a grey zone anymore because we are 21 years in NATO and European Union. But the grey zone is for the countries who are not yet in. And as we know as well that the grey zone for Russia, if you're the neighboring country, it is a green light for aggression, and we have witnessed that. And that's the reason why Sweden and Finland joined the NATO as well, and we are very happy about that. And turning back to this heavy violation of Estonian airspace and NATO airspace, it was the clear witness that NATO is actually working. This air patrolling, what we have in our Baltic states, worked well. And as well, technically what happened, and it is like the protocol that if the Russian planes take off, then Finland actually took over the first. And then our planes, actually in the Estonian case, the Italian ones, they went up. And then the Swedish was up as well. They were up as well. And so you can see as well that NATO is working on that level perfectly. And for NATO as well, it was first time such a brutal violation of the airspace. So I can say, as a former defense minister as well, everything what we agreed, it worked. And as well, there is always the question whether we could shoot them down or not. And I assure you, we have all the protocol, all the rights for that. But this time, it was provocation. It was not immediate military threat to Estonia. But if this plane could turn into Estonia, I think that this command would have been given. But what Putin wants to achieve, and this is about the hybrid attacks, and I hate the word about hybrid attacks. We're talking about attacks on all different levels which are not reaching on the Article 5 level. So in Europe we have lots of them, and in Estonia as well. If we list everything hybrid, what we have had during the last 3.5 years, and put this list 4 years back, we could be all in shock, maybe even called as well Article 5. This is a strategy what Putin has. Boil us as a frog, turning on the heat and testing the societies and unities. But in this case, it was not like the single one, what we had in Estonia. Just a couple of days before, we had a drone attack against Poland. And if you put it to the pattern, now we have had as well, something happened in Copenhagen airport, Munich, and so on. So it's not proven whether it was Russian or not, but the heat is increasing. And we need to respond. And I think that Estonia and Poland, we called as well Article 4 consultations. It was a right thing to do. Ours was only 8 times during the NATO history, but already too often, I can say. And also the Security Council meeting, what we asked and called, it worked brilliantly in the meaning. I think that Putin made a mistake because one thing is practical capabilities what NATO has. And we agreed as well that the Eastern sentry mission what we have, we will increase the capabilities and we look at the protocols and everything, and I'm sure it will happen and strengthen the eastern flank. But mainly, I think Putin is testing as well our political unity. Amongst Europe, Europe is more united than ever before about defense, I think, but also transatlantic unity between Europe and US. And there was a clear message and also the vocabulary that President Trump used after the Security Council meeting and after meeting with President Zelensky during the UNGA week in the beginning, when he was asked whether we need to shoot and are you ready to shoot down the Russian planes next time, it was a very clear message that yes, if there is need for that, it will happen. Not exactly the wording, but the meaning. And also the change of the vocabulary and rhetoric from President Trump was really tremendous, what we haven't seen during the last half year before, about Russia is weak and also Ukraine has an opportunity to win. So what we see, of course, we do our part, and also Eastern Century on military level, the planning is there to increase the capabilities. But please don't use this word like hybrid, that hybrid is nothing and then military attacks are something. It's all together actually the situation, what has been improved on a bad way during the last 3.5 or even 4 years. And now the question is, finally I'm saying, Putin is playing with our fears. And all the military people, also the politicians, they know already, yes, our how to say, the stand is like, mindset is, let's not escalate. But exactly Putin is using that. And he's actually more afraid of escalation than we think. So I'm sure that next time, if the planes are coming to NATO airspace, if there is a need for that, we should act as well, to send a very clear message that this is a red line.
Very good points. I think that, like, from my perspective as well, it looked like a very actually proportional and good response, and at least European NATO worked exactly as it's supposed to be. I'm a little skeptical that this change of heart will last with Mr. Trump, but we will see, and time will tell. We will probably know in the next 2 weeks, as tends to be his preferred deadline. Turning now to you, Colonel Hans Granlund, who is the Chief of Staff at the Commander Task Force Baltic, and this is actually quite a new thing within NATO, and one of those multiple ways that NATO has responded in the past years and months to the rising or increasing maritime threats. So, if you could just walk us through. What does the CTF Baltic do? Like, what is its role in the NATO response to these attacks? How does it relate to these other initiatives Minister Tachna just mentioned, for example, the Eastern Sentry, but we have also the Baltic Sentry and Task Force X. So how does this all sort of hang together? And if you could also just share something with us, what kind of Russian activity do you observe from?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for having me here today. So the CTF Baltic, as you alluded to, is quite new. We were inaugurated 21st October last year, so we're not 1 year fully. And but we went into action on the 10th of January this year, and we've been leading the Baltic Sentry since. And CTF Baltic is a task force answering to NATO MARCOM when we are activated. And with that, we are also a multinational staff hosted by Germany. And currently 13 nations participate, all the nations around the Baltic Sea, and then some. So our task is to, in wartime, command NATO forces in the Baltic Sea, and in peacetime, plan for and then coordinate any actions or activities in the Baltic Sea. And as you said, the Baltic Sentry is one of these activities that is ongoing right now. And just also to follow on to what we heard here, hybrid warfare, and in my daily work there is also a lot of talk about the shadow fleet. Both these labels, I think, is something that draws attention away from there's a situation at hand that on our tactical level needs to be addressed. And that's what we do. And the formal task for the Baltic Sentry is to protect the critical underwater infrastructure. And that's what we do. And we do that on a daily basis with the nations that is providing forces. So under our command on a daily basis, there is the NATO standing maritime groups when they are in the Baltic Sea, and then other forces associated or affiliated to us by the nations. And on a day-by-day status, we see to it that we can be where we need to be in order to protect this infrastructure. And one funny thing with this critical underwater infrastructure thing is that when this all started, a lot of this was said to be bad seamanship. That was the bad weather, bad seamanship. And apparently we haven't had any bad seamanship and bad weather since the Baltic century started. So we've been lucky so far.
Climate change.
Could be. We have seen a change in the situation in the Baltic Sea over the last month, we would say. And the level of action and activity in the Baltic Sea is much higher since before the summer than it has been in many, many years. And this is something that people now try to address as the new normal. There's nothing normal about it. There's nothing. This is a changed situation, and it's a situation that needs to be addressed for what it is. We are also linked, of course, to all the work that is done with the Eastern Sentry, and some of the ships under our command has capabilities that also can work in the air domain. So I think we are well versed. And you asked also about the Task Force X. We have been cooperating with them, and of course they are part of the future. The unmanned dimension, both as a sensor for us and as a threat against us, is something that we need to take seriously and how to both follow closely and also learn how to utilize for our own part. So a lot of moving parts on the tactical level right now.
Indeed. So I think we are sort of in a situation where we're facing warfare that is conducted against us, but we're still living legally in peacetime. And this comes back a little bit to also what you pointed out, Minister, about these airspace incursions, that because we still have peacetime skies, there's a lot of civilian traffic as well and commercial traffic, both in the air and on the water in the Baltic Sea area. So it's not always so straightforward about resorting to tougher measures. Now, coming to you, Airis Rikvelis, National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister of Latvia. So what's your view on this question on the sort of, are you as optimistic as the Estonian Foreign Minister on with regard to the Baltic air policing situation and that the procedures work? And then also, I just want to add to this because, and it has been addressed a couple of times during the conference already, these attacks really pose quite a big challenge in terms of strategic communication. Like, how does one sort of avoid, as an authority, how does one avoid sort of like playing into Russia's goal of sowing panic in the population? How do you tackle this here in Latvia?
Thanks, Mina. I think Minister Tsahkna already described everything, so it's absolutely in agreement, I think, here in Latvia, that we are not in a so-called gray zone. We are proud NATO and European Union country, and if Russia feels that it can go and succumb us back to its sphere of influence, that's not going to happen. So. With these incursions in NATO airspace, particularly the latest one in Estonia, I think response of air policing was exemplary, but obviously 12 minutes in NATO airspace is too much. Obviously, we need to do something against that, and I think this is in hands of Secure that we trust fully. I mean, Eastern Sentry is the right response. Let me remind you that the decade ago in Wales Summit, we agreed that all these measures, they were called at the time reassurance measures, but also our philosophy on deterrence and defense was based on premise that this will be scaled up and down as necessary. So I don't think we are in a situation where we can scale down. So we need to scale up. So we in Latvia always are ready to host more allied troops on our soil, on our skies, and our waters. But it is important, I think, that the Baltic, the Eastern Century, is sustained over time. That it does not remain only on the paper, but also in practice. So if we need to keep sending our message about sovereignty or inviolability of our airspace, then maybe we need to keep more aircraft. We need to keep more aircraft in the air. But certainly these things are up to Secure, and when Secure was here in Riga a couple of weeks ago, I think he was presenting a very clear view and very clear message that this will be tackled. On the Baltic Century, I can just see how indeed these ships were actually making a difference after they appeared in the Baltic Sea. This January, we'll see whether that was indeed a bad seamanship. I need to trust police and investigative services that what they're saying, but as a national security expert, I certainly find it hard to believe that this was just so simple. One thing that I want to say from the larger strategy perspective, and that also kind of encounters the question of strategic communication. Sweden and Finland joining NATO is not just two countries joining NATO. It is finalizing finalizing in this region area of responsibility of NATO a whole strategic process. Now we are in a position to establish and, if you will, so impose the rules how we are going to behave in the Baltic Sea. For that, we currently lack capabilities in full. So we need to work on that so that we are not scared and concerned about Russian A2AD. Not only we are able currently to overcome Russian A2AD, we actually should impose our A2AD upon Russia. And should Russia miscalculate at one moment that it can deal with its Baltic fleet in harm's way against NATO countries, it should be sent a clear message that better don't start. You are going to fail in all accounts, and your consequences will be disastrous. What I want to say with that is that this is a very strong message also from the communications perspective to all our people here. Don't worry, Suwalki Gap is strategically important, but with the open Baltic Sea and Baltic airspace, that is just one of the ways of reinforcement, because if we dominate in the Baltic Sea, nobody actually can win the war in the Baltic Sea. So I think with this understanding, we can then build our communication strategies to our people that these incursions indeed are of psychological nature. They are nothing more than simply attempts to disrupt our lifestyle, disrupt our trust to government, and make us kind of psychologically nervous. It may happen. It happened 10 years ago, it happened 15 years ago in a smaller scale. We have lived here in the Baltics under the Russian hybrid or different psychological influence operations for years, for centuries actually. So nothing new in this regard. I'm not scared of that, and nobody should. I think that we have a very good communicative background to so to say send the message not only to our people but also those in Western Europe and across the ocean that this region is particularly important, and those who will dominate in the Baltic Sea will also dominate strategically in Northern Europe.
As you say, the new possibilities of cooperation in this region are indeed very important and great. It's actually very interesting to read NATO documents from the 1950s, even where they analyze sort of the role of Sweden and how nice it would be if the Swedes maybe made up their mind. So now, 75 years later, here we are. Getting to you, Jan Swords, legal advisor at NATO. We have already addressed a number of sort of legal aspects here as well, and unfortunately, Russia is quite good at identifying and exploiting legal loopholes in our legal frameworks, and they of course know that rule of law is very dear to us, and based on like the recent months, you could almost say that the first hurdle to a response is quite often figuring out who has jurisdiction to respond, and that's sort of an issue, especially in the maritime area where, for example, the UNCLOS seems to give quite a lot of leeway to this type of attacks, but not a whole lot of space to prosecute, actually, as we saw in this very recent Finnish court case against the crew of the Eagle S. So my question to you is sort of, what can NATO actually do here? Like, how can NATO help its member states streamline this kind of responses that are to attacks that are actually primarily not of military nature in that sense?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great question. But what I would, before I actually get on to what NATO and what allies are doing to perhaps tighten up on the legal side of the house, I just want to sort of push back very gently on a couple of those points. So firstly, I wouldn't say it's really a legal loophole that a state's domestic criminal jurisdiction doesn't apply extraterritorially as a matter of course, that it doesn't apply to foreign nationals, that it doesn't apply to foreign flagged vessels in respect of acts which might be occurring in international waters. So it's a deliberate feature of the international legal system and private international law, and it also reflects the importance of freedom of navigation. So in a sense, it's really for us to try to find the exception to that general position. And of course, if we do want to upset that delicate balance, then we shouldn't be surprised if some of the other countries then seek to exploit that sort of a stance. So we'll see sort of exorbitant jurisdiction being exercised in the Strait of Hormuz or South China Sea or elsewhere. And obviously that would have an adverse effect on freedom of navigation, which we all benefit from. And I suppose my second preliminary point, which actually chimes with some of the comments that we've already had, is that although we can seek to identify legal solutions to operational problems, there are also operational solutions to operational problems. We've heard about the sort of shadow fleet, we've heard about the spooks and saboteurs. They obviously sort of thrive in the shadows. But if we change, and we are changing our operational posture, then we can start deterring these attacks rather than having debates about how we can prosecute these people after these sorts of attacks. And I think that's the prevention obviously being better than cure. But you asked about what the states are doing and how we can sort of help on that legal side. And rest assured, there is so much going on in this area. There are no shortage of meeting of legal advisors on this at NATO, but also at other fora. And to pick up on your point about jurisdiction, yes, a lot of the work is on teasing out how to exercise jurisdiction. So whether allies and coastal states can exercise jurisdiction, particularly on the international waters. That's where a lot of this happens, and that's where it's most difficult legally. So they're looking at whether they can exercise these exceptions. They're also looking at whether we can sort of put some pressure on the flag states, often flag states of convenience, who do definitely have jurisdiction, and whether we can get them to do what they're supposed to do, which is to sort of investigate and to prosecute in these sorts of cases, or indeed whether they can just cooperate with us, or indeed consent to us boarding these vessels, which might be suspicious. So that's on jurisdiction. Another thing that people are exploring is the permissibility of acting within UNCLOS, within the Convention on the Law of the Sea, short of exercising jurisdiction and short of enforcing the law, short of using a force. So, I mean, typically the argument is if you have a right to lay cables and pipelines under international law, and you have a right to repair them, surely you should be able to protect them, and that vindicating your right to lay the cables must involve being able to sort of protect it, and that's not really an act of jurisdiction, it's enforcement, just giving effect to the reality of a right that you have, and whether that can be done with due regard, and that's a key sort of UNCLOS provision, with due regard for other rights under maritime law, such as freedom of navigation. And finally, outside the law of the sea, states are also looking at those sort of self-help measures in general international law. What do I mean by that? So rights of retorsion, whether you can impose costs on states that are acting in an unfriendly or unlawful way. So acts of retorsion, also legal countermeasures, which enables you to sort of do things which might otherwise be unlawful, non-forceful, proportionate things if you have been the victim of something unlawful. An interesting debate about whether that can be done collectively as well as individually. And of course, I wouldn't be a NATO representative if I didn't mention the relevance of self-defense potentially. So when would some of these events potentially trigger the right of self-defense in Article 5, and then beyond that even the plea of necessity, when the vital interests of a state are engaged, that can give you a basis to take action, even when you're not able to attribute responsibility.
Yeah, indeed, you mentioned there like a number of things. Attributions, of course, one thing, but unfortunately it seems that Russia is way beyond the caring about naming and shaming. So I don't think that we're going to get very far with that only, unfortunately. So we need to be a bit more creative. I also find the idea of like cooperating with the Cook Islands. We can try for sure, but in this case, unfortunately, it seems like Finland imposed costs on itself rather than on the aggressor. So that was an interesting precedent that we need to think about quite carefully. Last in a lineup, but certainly not least, at least what comes to your title, the length of it. Johannes Peters, head of the Center for Maritime Strategy at the Institute for Security Policy at the University of Kiel. Did I forget anything?
No.
All right, great. So given that you are coming to Riga from Germany, and Germany is often special, and also in what comes to the jurisdiction issues, the legal situation is very specific in Germany, specifically difficult. So Germany is a federal state, and the military has, for good reasons, a very, very limited role in internal security. So how can Germany effectively make sure that, for example, NATO's critical infrastructure or other installations that are located in Germany, there's quite a lot of those actually, how can Germany make sure that those are adequately protected?
Yes, thank you for the question, and thank you for having me in the panel. First of all, the debate we're currently having in Germany, which centers all around the issues you just mentioned, is a pretty German one, actually, because we currently behave as if this has been the first time ever we've experienced any kind of incursion by Russia. So it's a pretty late wake up for us again. And right now, yesterday, when I came back to the hotel, I turned on the TV. There's some German stations there, and I had in the nationwide television, there was a debate going on exactly around, are we threatened by the drones, in which way, and who can we respond, and all this kind of stuff. And you sitting there and thought, okay, this is not like 2014 or so. This is obviously, it's a bit late in the game to have this kind of discussion. But that's the way it is. And the problem in Germany is we are, as you mentioned, we are a federal state, but the only two things that remain solely in the responsibility of the federal states are education and the police. You can argue whether this is a meaningful thing, but that's the way it is. So technically, the first responder, when you have a drone flying over Kiel, as we had last week, it's the police of Schleswig-Holstein, which is neither trained nor equipped to handle this issue in any case. The next responder would be the federal police, same problem. And the armed forces are actually not allowed to do anything because our constitution forbids to make any use of the military for interior, within Germany for any interior issues. So that's the current debate we're having. Right now, it seems to be the development goes in having one legal framework for all federal states that makes completely clear where is in the responsibility, when and how, which mainly means it will be the federal police. And the debate is now going on saying, okay, but we will need the armed forces as well. How do we incorporate them without having to change the constitution? Because the problem we currently have with the in our parliament is that we need a 2/3 majority to change the constitution, and with the far right and the far left in our national parliament, it's highly unlikely to get a 2/3 majority to do anything about the constitution. So that is currently the debate going on. And the problem is here, which is very German again, we only see problems and not solutions, right? So there are, of course, a lot of things we are able to do. We are lacking creativity, actually. We're lacking the ability to look in what the legal framework actually is and say, okay, where are probably some gray zones, to refer to the title of this panel, or where do we have a bit of an elbow space, actually, to interpret the law in a way that actually suits us or helps us. It's a very interesting debate on the plane to Riga. I read an interview by a German professor focusing or specializing in constitutional law. And he made the point that the German armed forces are, by constitution, in charge when Germany is under threat, under military threat from another state. So, if we have reasonable proof, or we can reasonably assume that the drones that fly over Germany are associated with Russia and they are a threat to our national security, then the armed forces will be in charge to handle with these drones. That's a creative approach to our constitutional law by a real expert that would actually stop the whole debate. If you would follow this interpretation, then we won't have a debate at all. Then we can just make use of the military to actually handle these drones. So that is something we have to come to be actually have a bit more courage and a bit more creativity. Nothing which is firstly associated with Germans, probably, but I do still have hope. The other thing is that we currently have to, and there it comes back to the Stratcom argument, we have to be very, very careful that we don't overdo in actually making too much out of the drones as they actually are, right? It's no military incursion. We are not under threat. There were no target data generated, or all these kind of questions that were brought to me by a lot of people over the last week. The sole reason is to sow uncertainty within our society, right? To diminish the backing for the people who actually, for the politicians in charge. That's the main reason behind it, nothing else. So, and that we have to communicate clearly that this is not a military threat, but the sole reason is actually to bring this debate into the German society and give it the certain spin that the people believe we are under threat, wars at our doorsteps, and you, dear Chancellor, are responsible for it because you are stupidly supporting Ukraine, and now we have this situation that you can't protect us anymore. That's the reason that actually the spin Russia wants to have. And we are not very much used to this kind of discussion in Germany. Now it's high time for having it. It was not our choice. Again, it was brought by us externally, but now we're having these discussions. So, bottom line is, as I said, there are possibilities to actually deal with it if we really want to, and if we really say, okay, we actually go forward, we make decisions, and then we act. And it is important to actually frame the conversation not in the way Russia wants it to be framed, but in the way it should be framed. That is actually the two main issues we're currently facing.
I think you raised a lot of important points about like the question where we are actually on the peace-war continuum, sort of where exactly we're at the moment. And I would maybe just add to that it's one interesting point in that Eagle S verdict in Finland was that the court ruled that the damage that this would have, or this caused or could have caused, was not significant enough to really warrant a heavier sentence. So we were sort of victims of our own resilience. So thanks to the redundancy of the infrastructure, it wasn't sort of, there was no case for this, for the prosecution's case. So I'm very happy with the panel because like everybody kept to time. So we have plenty of time for questions also from the audience. And I see right away the first one here in the front.
Yes, good evening.
Can you wait a minute? Somebody's running with the mic to you. Perfect.
Good evening, Christoph Karich, German Defense Attaché here in Riga. Thank you very much for us Navy guys here. It was a pleasure to follow your discussion on the Baltic Sea. On 26th January, a ship called Veshen dropped his anchor close to the island of Gotland. And the captain said, what I read from the media, he was in distress. The wind was Beaufort 5, as I called from my Navy command in Germany, and the wave height was 1.50 meters. And the ship was 35,000 tons. He was not in distress. That was bullshit. So I would like to see him in prison, because he's a blunt liar. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Sols from Legal Affairs and maybe His Excellency from Estonia, how can we get this crew to prison? Thank you.
Great question. Do we have a second question right away, or?
So here front.
Yes, Edward. The mic is just behind you.
Yes. Hello, Edward Lucas. I'm interested in the balance between defence and deterrence, and I'd like the panel's thoughts on that. See, if we had time, we could build up fantastic defences, but we don't. We could make the whole Baltic region into a giant Finland. So we need deterrent responses, and they probably shouldn't be tit for tat. They perhaps shouldn't even be from the country that's been hurt. They might be better from another country. But I think Russia sees that we don't have those deterrent responses at the moment, and that's why they're continuing to escalate. So how do we rebuild the escalation ladder here?
All right. Would Mr. Swartz from Legal Affairs like to kick off?
Thank you for the question. I mean, I obviously sort of teased out some of the jurisdictional questions in my sort of introductory comments, and obviously that is going to be a very important part of any analysis. I'm afraid I don't know the exact facts of this case, although I can say that if lying were a crime, that would be bad news for lawyers, I have to say.
Minister.
Yes, what we should do, I'm not a legal expert, but of course we would put this crew in prison. But the question is, finally, we need to have a legal basis for that, and this is now the ball is going back to the legal office. But what I'm saying is that this is the game, actually. We are prisoners ourselves because we are following the international law and conventions and everything. Estonia as well, we were chairing this Council of the Baltic Sea states, and we proposed a non-paper, actually, how can we implement the existing conventions and laws in real life. And also there are lots of opportunities for that. Not only maybe on military level and free seas, but also environmental questions, many other questions. So, but what we had a case with this new polar bear between the gas pipeline between Estonia and Finland, when you as well said that maybe Finnish court is not able to run the case. Estonia probably will. But what happened was finally, actually, captain was. Not caught, but under the court in Hong Kong. Yeah. And it's a clear case, and it's not a small amount of money. It's finally reparation, everything cost like 60 million, but also the energy price and everything else went up. So we're talking about a couple of hundreds of millions of euros, maybe. So it's a real thing. Maybe it was, the bad weather or something, but I think that you are professionals and I'm sailing, I'm the salesman, small yachts. But I know as well, and I talked to some tankers captains, that it's impossible to actually to go ahead like 200 kilometers anchored and not recognizing that. This is impossible, even with the bad weather. So, but the case is there, how much and where we can use the force. We had a case with a tanker Jaguar in spring, which came in, it was a so-called shadow fleet without flag, insurance and everything, came into Estonian territorial, not territorial, but economical waters. So we went there and we asked to cooperate. Of course, she didn't. And then we escorted the ship out from economical waters. But we could stop as well, based on all different conventions, if we could see that anchor is coming out and we see direct threat to our infrastructure. We could use the force there. Of course, after in the court, maybe we could argue it was a right and wrong. But it is all it's about our fear of escalation. This is all goes there and Russia is using. And this very specific case in spring, first time ever, Russia sent a fighter jet to follow and to protect this shadow fleet vessel. Before that, they never, connected themselves to that. They said, "Oh, sorry, these are the guys who are like, making some business." But this was a real, evidence that actually Russia is connected and ready to use military force as well. Yeah, but we were ready to go there if the anchor could have been out, and there would be all the legal parts. So, and happily as well, it's not a question between Estonia and Finland and the Baltic Sea. France actually did last week the same approach, and I think that this is a case we can have actually as well legal ways out, but we need to have not fear about that.
Yeah, that was a very interesting case indeed, because it was sort of the first moment when Russia sort of came out of this grey zone that they used to, like this legal grey zone or like this kind of attribution grey zone that they
and
used
even
to hide
they
in.
violated the NATO airspace for whatever, the 48 seconds or whatever, but they came in. So, and we were already frozen. So we cannot be like this.
The second question was on the balance between defense and deterrence. Maybe you would like to tackle that one.
I can give it a stab. I think deterrence should be seen as the first line of defense. And there is no contradiction between the two terms. But something sometimes I think we forget is that we sometimes show fear of what Russia can do to us. I think we also should recognize that the Russia have that fear against us too. So if we do coordinate and orchestrate actions, it will be noted, and it should be proactive to a point. And if you take everything into concern, what is happening during a year, everything we heard here now regarding interactions from nations against ships, that is, from our point of view and a legal point of view, a national action or a national under national jurisdiction. I don't think we should be that certain that the Russians see it that way. They see more of a monolith. That we are not fully coordinated is nothing that they assume. They think we are coordinated, which we are to a certain point, but we can get better at that. And there are things we do for readiness. We prepare ourselves, we forward deploy, we are out there. And the more of this we do as an orchestrated maneuver, the better prepared we are, and we can do more of what we have seen with these enhanced vigilance activities as Baltic Sentry and now Eastern Sentry. And we should be even quicker than we have been these times.
I think Sweden and Poland also reacted with this. Was it called Gotland Center? There have been so many centuries now that I'm starting to mix them up. But that was actually like quite a
trademark.
Yeah, and hopefully Russians are taking note of this. Sometimes we have to view ourselves like they do, so we would be impressed. Anybody else comments on this deterrence and defense question?
Yeah, I would probably say we have to make up our minds that we are actually successful with the deterrence we do, because the case you mentioned when Russia sent out a fighter jet, to actually escort this or make a statement regarding this vessel. It was a strategic loss for Russia, right? Because they gave away the card saying we have nothing to do with bad seamanship of private companies. So it was a strategic loss for them. And they decided, okay, the fleet is so important to us that we have to commit ourselves as a state with this shadow fleet. So that's actually a victory. We created a strategic dilemma for Russia, and they actually had to make a decision, and it was not a good one. So, and that's actually, I'm completely with you, Hans. It's we should less think about the dilemmas or the problems Russia is creating for us. We should more think about how we can create dilemmas for Russia, because we are in a position to do this, right? And it's not that difficult. And that probably should be the way we start thinking, because the dilemmas we currently have, we can deal with them. It's not, we are not under attack. It's not a military aggression. It's doable. It's handleable. But we should think about how to create dilemmas for Russia. That would be the best.
We can play this game too. Yes.
Yeah, very quickly, I think it's right to say that deterrence comes from defense capabilities. So we may say, yeah, at this moment maybe we are not where we want to be, but. Well, I fully agree. I don't think Russians think the same way. I think that they think that we are far beyond where they can actually take on us that easily on a full scale and full front. There are many strategies that they can still employ, but that's I don't think for this conversation. But I think what is important that we need to take three things in one continuum, and that is military capabilities, industrial capacities, and our societal will to resist. And on each of them we have a separate panel here, but I would just say we will improve on industrial capacities. It definitely will improve on industrial capacities with the help of the European Union and this complementarity of NATO and the EU. But I think Russians by now should understand, and if they did not understand that, they should understand it now, today, at this very moment, on this panel. We will fight. We will fight. There will be no 1940 again. And they will perish more than they are perishing currently in Ukraine. There will be disasters for them. So don't attack. Don't even think. And from that perspective, will of the Baltic states to fight is larger than I think than ever in the history, or to defend that. Let's be more precise. Defend the country should that be attacked. What happens with the rest of our allies at NATO and member states in the European Union? I don't precisely know, but I think that is also changing the mindset. I mean, the drone incursions in Scandinavia and Germany, I think they are changing people's perception of what actually the threat is. Baltic states are not going to be the first necessarily. That might be Copenhagen, that might be Oslo, that might be Stockholm, that might be Munich, Berlin, whatever. I think also the rhetoric here must be changed. There are no first states in line. Everyone is in line for Russia. And we need to be absolutely clear about that, to communicating that to our people as well.
Very important message, Minister.
Just to add on that is that if you see the very short period, we must get rid of our fear. I'm not talking about the Baltic states, Finland, Poland, and frontliners, because we have no this fear. We are ready to fight, because this is an existential question for us, no doubt about that, whatever happens. And happily as well, we have now the new NATO regional defense plans since Vilnius summit. And I think the deterrence is actually, we fulfill the caps, and we as Estonians, and I think Latvians, Lithuanians, and Poland as well, we will be ready from the first second to take down lots of stuff in Russia and the other side of Moscow if the real aggression will start. But we need to understand as well that Russia is weak, in the meaning of he's stuck in Ukraine already more than 3 years. He has no full-scale capabilities for full-scale aggression right now, but then behind that we need to have this political unity and as well the will to fight and readiness to fight. Without that, this is exactly why Putin is testing us, pushing the lines about different hybrid stuff, and then we always think about the legal opportunities and whatever. We need to show that we are ready to fight, and that's it. And that is a good deterrence with the real capabilities. We missed 10 years, actually, I'm sure, because 2014 was already very clear. So maybe 2008, Georgia, but okay. But now we're there.
Mm. We have time for one more question. Is there... Yes, over here.
So thank you. My name is Thomas Nilsson from the Swedish Intelligence Service. I would like to follow up that was brought up of some of the panelists in the discussion. Do you think that there is a risk if we, and I think most of us would agree that we are actually fighting a hybrid war with Russia, and we will do for a time, if we label every incident and bad things that happen in our society world as a hybrid warfare, and we say it's Russia all the time, could that actually be a risk that is playing along the Russian strategic objectives and the theme, the Russian spin used against us? I would argue that strategic communication is an important element in hybrid warfare. Also connected to that, a risk for overusing, using that word, overusing the Article 4 consultation, because you could imagine if Russia saying, if you look, NATO is not protecting you towards our population. They are going to Brussels and they talk and consultation, and you are spending 5% of your hard-earned tax money on this. Is that really the way to do it?
Well, I think...
I can answer that easily. I agree that everything what happens in our families and whatever, the domestic violence, Russia is not responsible probably. But about cases which Russia is responsible, or whoever, North Korea, or I don't know, we must say it publicly out. I sent out at the end of August the first secretary of Russian embassy in Tallinn, who literally was mediating the different attacks and attempts in Estonian territory. We have arrested more than close to 20 persons, some of them they are in prison, because there is a lot of evidence actually that Russian secret services are acting in Europe, financing, coordinating and hiring people. So, and these cases, of course, if we have proof, we must be allowed and then act as well. Article 4, I'm not happy as well that we need to call them, but if we call Article 4 without results, it will be the problem. But we actually, as you remember as well, we called Article 4 on Friday, and finally we gathered on Tuesday, and the reason was to have a military consultation, actually what will be the outcome of that, as an Eastern Century, increasing the capabilities, so on. So I'm sure that we have an old saying in Estonian language that don't call wolf, wolf, wolf all the time, and finally, if it's coming, then what is reacting? But these times, in the pattern, it was a right time. But also there must be a real outcome to show as well to your people that actually there was some kind of decision on whatever. Just to gathering and talking, we do it in European Union a lot, but not in NATO. So. Could you remind the audience what it was in this case, the outcome of that meeting? Outcome was that it was agreed that the Eastern Century will be in the meaning of military level increase the capabilities. Let's see in the further. But there are some things as well. I think even in Estonia, everything is too public already. You know, all the military planning, all the capabilities. Sometimes I think that I love Finnish people more because they are doing stuff and then talking later. So I think that we'll see in the future what will be the outcome of that. But the reaction was solid. You have no idea what kind of domestic issues that strategic culture of not talking creates in my country. Go ahead, you wanted to ask.
Very quickly. I mean, you are all here in the midst of almost in the midst of October, and the largest catastrophe in Riga is usually the first snow, always at the end of October when it comes. Whatever we prepare, we always have a tragedy here. Other than that, Latvia does not have any other threat except Russia. So if that is a threat, there is only one source where that comes from. It does not come from Estonia or from Lithuania. or from Sweden, usually. It can only come from Russia and Belarus. We didn't talk about instrumentalization of the migration that we're actually fighting every day. I mean, 10,000 cases for this size of a country. I mean, this is huge strain of our border guards and national guards and military. So my point is, there are no any other threats. What should Latvian then kind of restrict himself if that is always Russia? Then on Article 4, first of all, there are no limitations, right, on Article 4, but I fully agree. If a country feels that it's being threatened, it has a right. And this right must be kept sacrosanct as any other article in the Washington Treaty. My point being that if Russians want to be loved in this world, they simply need to stop to do a couple of things. First and foremost, stop flying into NATO airspace. Stop the war in Ukraine. And get rid of your empirical ambitions. And believe you me, we will be all so happy about such a great neighbor, such a rich neighbor, such a powerful neighbor. But this is not going to happen. So we stick where we are.
I hope somebody got this on a clip for Twitter or and other social media. The other panelists, please, you have 1 minute left for any famous last words.
No.
Come on, Johannes, you look like you want to say
you always have last words, right? No, but that was exactly the point I made in my statement. We, particularly in Germany, we have to be careful that we don't overdo it, right? That we don't frame everything as hybrid attack now. And we have been too reluctantly for a long time to actually speak it out. Mainly the politicians have been too shied away from it. And now some parts of the population have the feeling it comes all at once in a huge wave, which is not the case. So we have to be very careful that we find the right time to actually tone that down again. But right now we certainly have to create some sense of urgency, and then we have to explain it. And then we have to set the right narratives. And that is probably exactly the phase we're currently in. So I completely agree, yes, the biggest favor would be just to freak out and panic, or just to blame everything on Russia, because that's what Russia is doing in their narratives, right? So we are under threat by the West because we are the source of all evil we have ever been, and that's why they attack us constantly, which is not the case. So yes, I totally agree, we have to, but that's an individual assumption, I think. Each state has to find the right way to address its people. I've been to Tallinn 2 weeks ago on your conference, and the way you guys talk there openly, when we would do the same on the German conference, that would be like a no-go. People would just freak out, right? And that's so it's a very individual thing. I love the way you do it, but that's not the way it could be done in Germany. Not right now, maybe in a few years' time.
Yes.
Just to sort of conclude, there's obviously a great symbolism attached to these articles and Article 4 consultations, but of course allies consult every single day at NATO. It doesn't have to be formally badged anything if people don't want to do so.
All right. Would you like to have any last words?
I've been living 1 year in Rostock now, so I start to get acquainted with the German way. So if I remember it correctly from my National Defense University studies, quoting an old dead German, war is politics continuated with other means.
Indeed.
And if that's the case, we are at war. We are not at a shooting war yet, which we will try to do everything to avoid. But we need to have a reset where we stand with our neighbor in the East.
Thank you very much. An excellent way to end the panel. Thank you.